So good morning and welcome to today's session on switching fundamentals, the second in our series of technical sessions. My name is Phil Tarbox, National Sales Manager for D-Link. It's great to be here this morning. Very warm welcome to everybody across Australia and New Zealand and from anywhere else in the world that you are joining us as well. On today's session, we're going to be covering just the basics of networking and looking at one of those key fundamentals on VLANs. Joining me are my two colleagues, David Urbano and Aaron Bilton. David is a pre-sales engineer based in Sydney, and David will be conducting today's session. But before we get started, there's just a little bit of housekeeping to do. Particularly for those of you that are joining the session that aren't yet a D-Link for Business Rewards partner, we'd certainly encourage you to sign up to our partner program. There's some great benefits of being a part of that. One is to get access to engineers like David and Aaron for priority technical support, either directly with them or through our 1300 telephone number. There's a demo purchase program that's available to you and some excellent discounts that are available up front, and some incentives that we run throughout the quarter as well. So if you've not yet registered for that program, please do so at dlink.com.au/rewards or dlink.co.nz/rewards. So please go and get signed up there. Of course, all D-Link product is available through our distribution partners, covering both Australia and New Zealand. We have Ingram Micro and Cinex. And just in Australia only, we have distributors Blue Chip Infotech, EdSys, Hills, Multimedia Technology, and Pacific Datacom. And I'm sure if you're joining us today, you'll have an account with at least one, if not more, of those distributors. So let's get started. I'd like to now hand over to David, that's going to walk us through today's agenda and get started on the presentation. David, over to you.
Thanks, Phil. Thanks for the introduction. Hopefully everyone can hear me pretty clear. I will try to do my best for all of you guys to understand what I'm trying to explain here today. So my name is David Urbano. I've been with D-Link for now probably 5.5 years, amazing years, at least from my side. I don't know my boss side, but yeah. I'm going to I'm going to walk you through VLANs, so the amazing world of virtual LANs, where almost everything is possible. We're going to work through that. This is the agenda, but also please understand that VLANs, virtual LANs, can help us out to separate networks. That's the main point here, right? Many of you have been asked from your clients, how can I separate my traffic from guests, from students, from my staff? So that's the whole point of today. I'm going to walk you through all of that and show you how simple it is, and then let you with a setup, an example. We're going to walk through everything today. Okay, very quickly, very simple. If you have questions, as Phil said before, please feel free to ask. So the agenda for today will be introduction to VLANs. What is a VLAN? What exactly are we talking about? We're going to go through the terms, what port VLAN ID means, what a VLAN ID means, how can we set it up, how VLAN tagging works. So what is a tag? What is an untagged port? How does it includes into your packet, into your frame? We're going to walk through that. We're going to see the standard, of course. We're going to see the examples. And there is something very interesting and nice that I'm pretty sure is going to help you out to most of you, which is automatic VLANs. How can we automate this process of VLANs on our networks? Okay. So we're going to go through that. And also, let me just click here. Thank you. Setting up VLANs. So I'm going to show you with a little example, a router and a switch. How can we set this up, okay? And of course, a live demo that we have prepared here for all of you. So let's get started. So introduction to VLANs. What exactly is a VLAN? A VLAN, a virtual local area network. What we want to achieve here is basically to separate our traffic on our network, right? Thus giving us better performance, but also security. The idea is that we don't want our sales team to talk to our accounting team, for example. We don't want our guest being able to get into our accounting, right? So we have two ways that we can do this. One, port-based VLANs, or by a trunking. If we want to spread across our VLANs into our network, we can use trunking as well. So this is what we're going to see today. Now, regardless of the physical location where our clients are, we can set it up on our existing switches, right? Ideally, we want to have separate infrastructure for each of our services. That's almost impossible. However, it is advisable for CCTV, for example. We want to do that. We want to have physically separate hardware for it. But in this case, we just want to separate logically, virtually. Okay, so that's what we're going to do today. What terms we need to know about this? We need to know what is VID or VLAN ID, which is a number where we're going to define. By default, you might remember, you're probably very familiarized with this. By default, every single port on our VLANs have VLAN number 1 or belongs to VLAN 1. But if we want to create new VLANs, we can create new numbers. Okay, so VID, that's the case that we're going to use it for. PVID, which is the port where you're going to assign that VLAN as well. We're going to go through what is a tag, how the tag it is embedded on the actual packet, and how can that tag be passed into the switch, and how the switch is going to handle that traffic. Okay, so we're going to see that. But also, we need to get familiarized with the ingress and egress rules or modes that the ports can be on when we send traffic, when the traffic is forwarded to a certain place, or when we receive a traffic on the actual switch. So let us see the mechanics of how VLAN works. So let's say in this particular instance, we have a switch, a normal 8-port switch. This switch has been assigned ports 1, 4, and 8 to work with VLAN 2. So it has been set up to only talk to VLAN 2. So any traffic that goes into port 1, it will also be replicated on 4 and 7. However, have a look here that the traffic, the packet has got a tag on it, right? So it might come from a router, it might come from a switch, it might come from a device that knows about tagging, and the packet here has got a tag on it, right? So how the switch is gonna handle this traffic? Well, very simple. It's gonna send the traffic through port 1. If I have set up my switch, like in this case, port 4 with a tag, is gonna keep that tag and it's gonna send the traffic through, that packet through. Look at port 7, right? Port 7, it is set up as well on VLAN 2, but it's untagged. So it has been set up in a mode where the tag will be stripped off. As soon as the traffic goes through, that tag is gonna be taken away from that packet. However, notice here that only the ports that belong to that VLAN will hear about this packet. So that is gonna help me out with broadcast and multicast, right? Ports like 2, 3, 5, 6, and 8, they wouldn't even know about this packet, okay? That's the whole idea here. Now, there are two ways here of seeing it. Obviously, when a packet comes with a tag and when a packet comes without a tag. Without a tag is basically the opposite. The same ports has been assigned to VLAN 2. That's something that you will do manually. When you do that, and this packet comes through, if the port number 4 has been set up as tag, well, it will add within the frame, the Ethernet frame of this packet, it will add this tag, right? Similar to port 7, Port 7 is just going to leave the packet go through because it belongs to the same VLAN, but it's not going to add anything. It's just going to leave the packet unchanged. So that's basically the mechanics behind the tag or untag or tag or untag ports. Okay, very simple. Probably it's easier to understand when we do the exercise. So I'll walk you through that. Now, of course, we can span and extend our networks, and all the VLANs can talk through different switches, right? This is probably a typical example where we have, let's say, 3 buildings here, right? Left, right, and the center, there are different buildings. Each of them will have VLANs. So I have separated my switches with guests, sales, and accounts. If I want that traffic to go between the switches, and this is obviously a rule of thumb, and this is how it works, the standards, how the standard works, I have to set up my link between the switches in a tag manner. So it has to be a trunk port, right? The trunk port is the one that is going to allow me to send the traffic and add traffic from different VLANs. It will know that you are sending more than one VLAN on that link, on that trunk, right? So the switches, and you have to do that in both sides of the switches. So the switch will know, and then with your assignation of the ports, it will know that more than one VLAN ID comes to these ports, okay? So this is basically how you will see it pretty much in a small office. I want to separate guest, sales, accounts. If you want to add on top of this wireless Wi-Fi, it will be basically the same, right? So you can do this by separating SSIDs by guests or staff, or the same here, sales or accountants, okay? Now, let's have a look a quick example on how this looks like on our switches. This is an example of DGS 1210. We're going to do an exercise anyway, but I just want to walk you through how this will look like on our switches. So the web interface here is going to show you how to do the tag or untag. Now, as I mentioned before, every single port on a switch belongs to VLAN 1, right? So as soon as you logged in, you will see all the ports like this. VLAN 1, default, this is a 28 port switch, and this is what it will look like. How do we create a VLAN? Very simple. Step 1, try to remember, design beforehand, what ports are you gonna use, right? What ports are you gonna connect into this new virtual network? In our case here, it's going to be from 1 to 10. So all I need to tell him is to set the ports for this new VLAN, second VLAN, as no members. They wouldn't belong anymore to the default VLAN. Next, what ports are going to be a stack? What ports am I going to use to be connected to a different switch or a router? So in this case, from 11 to 14, okay? That's pretty much it. I just need to tell him what number am I going to use. In this case, number 2, a VLAN name. It could be voice, it could be guest, it could be whatever you guys want. In this case, will be sales. And then in this new VLAN, I just add the ports that I mentioned in my step 1 and 2 as no members. I will add them here. They will belong 15 to 24. They will belong to VLAN 2, right? That's pretty much how you do VLANs. It's very simple, very quick. And I'll go through an online, through a live exercise where I can show you exactly how this works. Now, there are different modes in which you can set up your ports, right? The general rule is you want to set up your trunk or your port as a trunk if you are connecting that port directly into another switch or into another router, perhaps into a server that knows about VLANs, right? That's the rule of thumb. If it is an end user device, for example, a laptop, for example, an access point, let's say a projector, you want to set that port as an access port. So it will be an untagged port, all right? And there a case like the one that we're showing in this moment where you have a phone, an IP phone. Those IP phones normally have got two ports at the back of it, one for the PC and one for the phone. And what you want is to separate the traffic for voice for the phone and separate the traffic from the PC. So in that case, we could use the hybrid mode, where two VLANs will go across that specific port. You could use trunk as well. You could use sometimes general, which depending on the model of switch you're using. But for this specific case, 1200 series, access, hybrid, and trunk will be your setup modes, okay? Now, one really nice feature all our switches have, well, most of our switches have, especially the smart managed switches, is automatic VLANs, where you can set up your VLANs just once, and then as soon as you start connecting your devices, the switch will recognize the MAC address of that vendor, and it will set up that port automatically into the specific VLAN that you create. So let me show you that very quickly. So we go into the voice VLAN, automatic voice VLAN, and it will work basically for any other devices. That's also how we do surveillance. We have surveillance switches that can do basically the same as this, or exactly the same as this. So you create a VLAN, you set up priority. Ideally, if it's voice, you want to set it up in the highest priority available, right? We have from 0 to 7. In this case, we just select 5. So we create this setup once, and notice here that we are using TRICOM as a description. And all we need to know is the OUI, right? The first 3 bytes of the MAC address. When we know that, we just add that VLAN into our switch, and automatically after connecting the same vendor, in this case, the same phone vendor into your switch, let's say 54 port switch, automatically that port will go and belong to the specific VLAN that you created. In this case, VLAN 100, okay? Very simple, very nice. You can add your own vendor. So we have predefined some of them, but you can add whatever vendor you're working with, okay? Very simple. All right. So let's do some exercise. This is the exercise we're gonna do today. Very simple. We have a router here. Perhaps you are familiarized already with our series of routers. We have a DSR 250N and a 1210 series switch. All I'm trying to achieve here is to separate or create one VLAN, right? So I'll show you exactly how a VLAN works. You can see, you can follow probably up from there. How are we gonna do that? So first thing first, let me show you what are we doing, and then I'll do it live, okay? So we click on VLAN ID, and for this case, we're gonna connect port 1 from the switch to the router, port 1 to port 1, okay? Same as I just showed you here, port 1 to port 1. That means that the port 1 is gonna be tagged, right? The router also is gonna be tagged, and from there, we're gonna send both VLAN IDs. So we're creating a second VLAN, which is VLAN 88. I'll show you from here. Well, double N is here, but we have defined it at 88. It could be any number. Anyway, port 1 will go from port 1 to the router. We have selected that from port 2 to port 6 will stay on VLAN 1, so there is no change there. But from 7 to 14 is going to belong to the new VLAN, right? So those ones, we set it up as no members. That's the first step. Second step, we create the new VLAN. So we just click on Add, VLAN ID, in this case 88, and a VLAN name, guest, voice, staff, accounting, whatever you want. Okay. Same here, in this new VLAN, we set up port 1 as tag, port 2 to port 6, not member, they belong to VLAN 1, as we previously saw, but port 7 to port 14 will belong to this specific VLAN. And from port 7 to port 14, I'm going to connect laptops. I'm going to connect access devices or edge end user devices. Okay. I create my VLAN and then I apply. That's it. This is the end result. I have two pieces, one from port 2 to 6 and the other one from port 7 to 14. And this is what I should be able to see, right? From one side, I'll be getting 8 point something, and from the other side, I will be getting 88 point something. I have predefined that as my subnets. It could be obviously anything you want within the local area network, okay? Let me go through the actual demo first, show you how it works, and then the last thing I would like to show you is how the router has been set up. Because let's just stay on the switch side first. So let me just move this across first. So this is our switch here. I set it up previously with, by default is 10.90.90. I set it up as 192.168.8.250, okay? I actually created the VLANs, but let us just recreate the VLANs again. So this is how you will find the switch. By default, everything belongs to VLAN 1, okay? Now, I'm gonna add my new VLAN as shown here on our steps. Right. But since I pre-configure, let me just show you here what happened before. So you will find all of this like that. So this is default, right? Default VLAN 1 to 20. This is a 20 port switch. What numbers I want on my new VLAN? I want 7 to 14, which means I do 7 to 14. That was a different switch. This one is a 20. I can do just, let's say 7 to 40, so we'll do the same there. And port 1, which is the one that it goes to the router, okay? It's gonna be tag, 2 to 6, it will be untagged. So here I'm gonna connect my PC, my laptop. Apply there, new VLAN, VLAN ID, 88, VLAN name, let's call it voice, let's call it whatever. Port 1, tag, port 2 to 7 will be non-member. This is the new VLAN, but port from 7 to 14, it will be my new assignation for those ports, okay? Apply. So port 1 will connect between the router and switch, and tag will be 2 to 6. The rest, for this case, I don't really care. But 7 to 14 will belong to VLAN 88, okay? Good. Now, just in case I've just saved the config, remember that we don't save the config and the switch restarts, it will go back to the previous configuration that was saved, okay? So just in case. Now, how I have a little demo here that I wanna show you. Hopefully everyone can see this properly. So I'm showing you here my little network. So we have router, switch, PC, and Phil over there. So as you can see, practicing social distancing. Mm-hmm. Now, what do we have here? Remember that we just set up the switch. So let's take, that's the switch. We have port 1 to port 1 on a trunk. We just labeled this recently. And PC1, which is the current PC I'm working on, I'm gonna set it up on the same VLAN as default. So let me just go back here. How do I know that the trunk is working? Because the router is the one doing the DHCP, right? So I should be getting the IP address from VLAN 1, which is 8.1. You probably remember from here. VLAN 1 has got 192.168. We defined it as 8, right? And the new VLAN 88 will be 88 point whatever random IP address DHCP is gonna give us. Okay, so I've just set up, I've just connect the PC. Let us just check from here if I can move. I just need to move a little bit. Well, let me just do it. Yep, I'm working on a Mac, but also there is Windows at the other side, just in case, for those Mac lovers or haters. So this is the IP address I'm getting from the switch because I'm connected to the default VLAN, right? Now, what happens if I connect to the new VLAN, which you can do in 2 ways. One, let me show you from here. So this one, 8. If I connect my new PC to the new VLAN, what do you think I'm getting? I'll be getting the IP address from the VLAN 2, 88, right? So I have virtually separated my switch from one VLAN to another. Now, probably there is not much way to see it from here, but if I decide to go back here, and that's how we did it with this little setup. I have my PC, PC1, PC2 is a Windows PC that we just set up for this purpose. So once more, PC1, default VLAN 8. PC2, I got it by wireless on a TeamViewer session, so I can log into it and see what IP address it gets. Same here. Clearly, I can. I won't be able to get on the internet. Of course not. There's no internet there. But what is the whole purpose here? From this new PC, which is 88, I shouldn't be able to ping the router, right? So I'm physically, or sorry, virtually separating my 2 pieces, okay? Similar here, if I want to ping that side, I shouldn't be able to do it. And that's, yep, that's the whole point of VLANs. So I'm using same switch. I'm using the same switch, but I'm having 2 VLANs on it, right? PC1, PC2, and the trunk port. Who is giving me the IP addresses? The router, okay? So let's go back to our presentation. So that's how simple it is to set up and create a VLAN. How many can I create? As many as you want, as many as, well, let me just rephrase that, as many ports as you have, although you might not want to do many VLANs or too many VLANs on one switch, but you can do, it's pretty flexible anyway. So this is the end result, same as I just showed you. Now,
so what about on that switch you just looked at? I think the maximum was 256 VLANs, I think was the default setting there.
The default setting, yes, correct. Although, yeah, I will be cautious about doing that many.
Okay, David, I have a couple of questions here for you.
Yes.
So, question here from Paul. Do you have to set up a route if you want a device to access another on a different VLAN?
Well, yes, you could do two things there. One, inter-VLAN routing that the router can allow you to do. However, inter-VLAN routing, probably I can show you, you guys can still see my screen, hopefully you can. When you create the VLAN in the router, which is my next step that I wanted to show you. So this is the router, right? The little router I just got set up here. There are two ways that you can do this to enable communication between the VLANs. One, enabling inter-VLAN routing on the router, or if you want to be more exclusive and obviously only allow certain parts of a subnet to connect between each other, you can create access control lists. And those access control lists, or ACLs, will be set up by the router as well. If you have a larger tree switch, you could do that there. Okay, so click that. That's the inter-VLAN routing here.
Okay, thanks, David. Got another question here from Mike. Is inter-VLAN routing enabled by default?
No, it's not. By default, it's disabled, as you can see here. So you will have to enable it. And yep.
Okay, another question here from David. How many hosts in a network do you have before broadcasting becomes an issue?
That's a good question. I think it depends on the size of your network. Probably, it depends. There are different variables there. Depends on the application you're using. Depends on obviously the amount of clients that you have, but also how are they communicating? Are they communicating to a specific central point? Are they communicating only to the internet? There is not a specific number that I can give you. It's more about designing the network to scale. And obviously, if there are already problems with broadcasting, a good way to avoid broadcasting will be VLANs. But there is not a specific number. It's probably per network design. I will treat it like that.
Okay, another question here from David. How do broadcasts affect wireless networks? The same as wired or worse?
Exactly the same. Exactly the same. Wireless is just a medium, right? So it will affect exactly the same. The best practice is VLANs, and on the same VLANs, you can assign SSIDs to the specific VLANs. So you will have, similar to here, guest, staff, member one, member two, whatever, or groups, and the same, all of them assigned to a specific VLAN. Yeah.
Okay, question here from Mike. How many VLANs can a single port be a member of?
As many as you have as well. As long as they are a trunk, they can belong to all of the VLANs that you have created.
So if the switch has got 256 is the maximum, so 256 would be the number.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, question here from Lee. Other than security, is there any benefit of setting ports to access rather than hybrid when only PCs will be plugged into them?
Not really. Hybrid is, well, access is only to one specific end user device. So a laptop, a PC. Hybrid is when you want to send more than one VLAN information into that port. So it could be hybrid or it could be trunk. because there are different vendors out there, because there are different ways to set this up. Sometimes trunk will work and you're sending two VLAN ID information, or you can set it up as a hybrid and it will do basically the same. Best option or best way to do it with 1210 series and the example I was showing you with the VoIP, with the voice, with the phone, sorry, it is hybrid, but it might work in trunk as well. So it depends.
Okay, from Tony, do you need to enable inter-VLAN routing on both VLANs?
You don't have to. Ideally, you don't want to, really, because you want the separation, the segregation of the traffic.
Okay, hopefully that answers your question, Tony. If you've got any follow-ups to that, just pop that in the Q&A box. Phil, great name. Great to have you on board today. Not enough Phils out there in the world. Is inter-VLAN routing packets, are inter-VLAN routing packets routed across the router or within the switch?
Within the router, yes, within the router. All inter-VLAN has to be done through a layer 3 device, either a router or a layer 3 switch. Remember on our first presentation, Aaron was talking about why do we need a switch or a layer 3 switch for? That's when the inter-VLAN routing will work.
Okay, John, any tips on documenting VLANs or specific software tools to do so?
Documenting VLANs. Actually, yes, that's a great question. Thanks for that. Generally speaking, you will want to organize your VLANs with the number that matches your subnets, right? So in our little test here, we said VLAN ID 88, and we assigned subnet 88 on our router, right? That's a good way to do it. So when you have a problem, you're troubleshooting, you know exactly what port are you looking at and what subnet are you referring to, right? Of course, you could change this. You could use whatever number you want and whatever number on the subnet, but then you're gonna start struggling and to understand how everything is connecting together. So yeah, definitely the best way will be associating the number of the VLAN ID with the subnet. Good question, thank you.
Okay, thanks for that one, John. And question here from David. If I have a management workstation and need access to multiple VLANs, do I just create firewall rules to allow that, or should we block all private networks by default?
There are different ways to do this as well. One way could be if the station doesn't support VLANs, we can set up something called asymmetric VLANs, where I can share the same untag port on different VLANs. Right? This is something that we explain a little bit more into our proper VLAN, switch training, which is one day on hands training. But you can do that if the station doesn't support tagging. You can do untag VLANs and share that into all your VLANs. That's possible. That's a good. It is not ideal, but it's a way to get around it. Yeah.
Great. Okay, thanks for all those questions. Back to you, David.
All right, thank you. Thanks, everyone. So I was showing you the router. Very simple, DSR 250N. Some of you might be familiar with it. The DHCP server is on both sides. So 8 on default, 88 on the new VLAN, which we define as 88, okay? One thing here is probably no one asked this, or probably is on your mind. What happened in the port of the router? How we set it up, how we did set that up. So this is the answer. The router has been set up also as trunk, right? But in this case, we make that port VLAN, we allow that port to send traffic of both VLANs, 1 and 88. Okay, so that's how the router has been set up, exactly as it is here. Well, that's basically it. I probably can show you a bit more on the actual setup, but yeah, if you have more questions, if you want us to do something else, feel free to let me know. Hopefully this has been informative and enjoyable for you. VLANs are not that complicated. Creating a VLAN is not that complicated. Probably if you start scaling, you're having more VLANs, more clients, traffic here, things like that, yeah, probably all you need to do is really to have a good design. Good design, looking which port is going to go where, what connects here, where is it going, things like that. But apart from that, VLANs, it's very simple, as you probably just saw.
Okay, David, a question here from Lee. Does automatic VLAN for voice require a physical PABX, or will the switch detect SIP phones automatically, even in cases where a cloud PBX is used?
Mm-hmm. Just remember that, probably moved this too much. Anyway, just remember that automatic VLANs, you manually set up the MAC address, the first octets of the MAC address of the vendor really on the switch. So it's as soon as the device, this is layer 2, we're not even connecting to the internet, we're not connecting to a router, nothing. As soon as we define the MAC address, the switch will, as you know, the switch will gather all the MAC address information. It will hold it in table. And as soon as he notes that the MAC address belongs to the specific vendor that you define, it will set that port into that VLAN. So the PBX, the cloud, everything else, it is after that. Here is just the switches will know about that MAC address that you define, and it will put it on that specific VLAN. That port will go into that specific VLAN.
Okay, I think Lee's got that. So yeah, the MAC's relevant to the handsets. Good stuff. Okay, question here from Mike. Is it possible to QoS a VLAN, as in phones/SIP?
Yes, definitely. QoS, as in you can give priority to your VLANs. You can add QoS to every single of your VLANs. And for voice, as we know, it's the most important thing, and one of the rule of thumbs that we should do. We should prioritize voice. But yeah, every single VLAN that when you create it, you can select a specific value for QoS. And that can be set up as well when you create the VLAN.
So, David, what are the different values? What are the numbers and what do they mean?
Yeah, it's just numbers. So you just have from 0 to 7, basically, on every single switch. That's very standard. It's 802.1p, I believe. That's the standard for QoS, which can be assigned as well to the VLANs.
Can you maybe show us, David?
Let me see on this switch. So let's say, actually I can show you from here, this time out. And we also show automatic VLANs just in case to make it more clear. VLAN, let's say voice, right? So from here, and we get these two questions as well, reinforce. VLAN ID, let's say 88. Obviously I have to create a VLAN before selecting here. So I have to go through my previous process and I select a priority. So that's the QoS priority that I will set this VLAN on, okay? And if I want my own vendor, I have, let's say, Yearlink. I just need to type in the first 6 numbers of the MAC address, right? And then I will create the VLAN as soon as the phone, as soon as the switch sees that there is a device with this specific MAC address, it will go into this specific VLAN. That port will go into this specific VLAN and will assign this priority. So 0 to 7, here is where you can set that up automatically.
So what's the higher priority, 0 or 7?
7 is the highest. 7 is the highest.
Okay, questions come through here from Wincy. When interconnecting to Cisco switches, should you set up as trunk and tagged with the same VLAN ID, similar to interconnecting D-Link switches?
Exactly the same. Just remember that this is a standard. D-Link doesn't have like Cisco's own proprietary standards. We are very standard, open to every single other vendors. So you can interconnect in the same way. If you are connecting switches and you're trunking them, you do exactly the same. As long as they are tagged and trunk on both sides, the VLAN should go through without any problem.
Okay, so another couple of questions come in, David. There's a tricky one in here, I think. We'll have to see if you're up for the challenge.
Let's see.
But I'll get to that one next. Question here from Raj, should VLAN IDs match between the router and the switch?
Should VLAN's ID match? Yeah, of course. They have to be the same. The names doesn't matter, really. Look that we use voice here, and we have in the router guest, I believe. But the VLAN ID number has to match. The number has to match because that's on the Ethernet frame. When we create a VLAN, you add up on that frame, on that Ethernet frame, you add up that number. That number is actually there. The name is just on a different field, but it doesn't matter. But the number has to match.
Okay, there's a comment here from Lee. We can all sympathise with this one. It's all fun and standards until ubiquity is involved. Thank you, Lee, for the comment. Appreciate it. Okay, David, are you ready for a challenge?
All right, let's go for it.
Okay, this is from Vasilios. Are you able to demonstrate the trunking and VLAN setup via CLI as well?
I haven't set up. I don't have a console cable with me. And at the same time, DGS 1210 series is not fully CLI. 1500 series it is, 3600s and the rest are, but not 1210. 1210 is not for CLI management. Although you can get details, and I can probably find out the commands to do it, but I don't think we can do that from the 1200. So challenge half accepted. 1500, yeah, no problem. 3600 series, no problem. But 1210, we can, because we'll have, there is no console on the 1200 series, really. So we need to telnet, and yeah, it's very limited.
So David, just I guess a question for you here following up, how often would you set up a switch using CLI?
Probably from 3600 onwards, I'll do it. If you are familiar with our series of switches, 1200 series, probably in this way, there is not really much you have to do. CLI is very useful when you want to set up more than one switch, right? Because you create your script, you have it ready, you start setting things up for 10 switches at the same time. All you have to do is change the IP address, right? So we copy, paste, pretty simple. But 1200 series, probably not a good idea. 1500s and onwards, you can do that, definitely. CLI, I will never I wouldn't think that there is a way that we will get rid of CLI, even though web interface looks pretty cool, pretty nice. You will see a lot of stuff on the dashboard, etc. But CLI is pretty useful, especially in those cases when you want to set up more than one switch, a lot of switches in one go. So yeah, you will have it there.
Okay, so Lee's got a comment here, I believe. CLI is covered in the on-site training day. Is there one coming up anytime soon? Well, yes is the answer, and I guess we're really waiting on government advice on that one. So watch this space there. I'd say probably from September, October onwards would be my best guess at this stage.
Mm-hmm.
There's a comment here from Rob regarding nuclear switching. It's our cloud managed switch and the trunk port options on there. There is a workaround if that's on that one, David, from what Aaron's indicated to me. Aaron, maybe you want to jump in and answer that question about Nucleus cloud managed switches.
Yes. With the Nucleus interface, we basically set the native VLAN. The native VLAN will be untagged, and then we just add the rest of the numbers in, and they'll sort of automatically tag them for you.
Yeah.
If that helps.
So Rob, hopefully that answers that one for you. Okay, Mike's asked a question here. Dave, can you maybe turn your speakers off for a second?
Yeah.
So regarding quality of service, is it egress or ingress control on switches? Do the router products provide ingress control?
Yeah, so 1210 series, you wouldn't have you wouldn't have that option there. From 3600 onwards, you can control egress and egress specifically. However, whatever packet flows into the port, it will have to go in both directions, right? So I guess you're doing something very specific, but in general terms, whatever you set up on the port, it will go for the traffic, regardless of what direction you're going to, right? Hopefully that answered the question.
So a question here from Phil. Where can I check time status of training days? Can you share a link or can we get on a mailing list? So we don't have any days confirmed just yet until COVID is I guess concluded, or we're back at a stage where social distancing and gatherings and all of that sort of stuff are there's a bit more certainty around that. If you are a Phil, I'm not sure where you're from. If you are a D-Link registered partner, you'll certainly get invitations from us whenever there's training that is happening in the state or territory in Australia that you are from. If you're in New Zealand, we do plan to have some training sessions running in New Zealand. So perhaps I will put up perhaps David, you can put up a slide that's got all of our contact details on it at the end of this deck.
Yep.
So just drop me an email or give me a phone call, Phil. You're very welcome to do that. So there's my email address there, phil.tarbox@dlink.com.au, and we'll make sure that you're on those mailing lists. Please, if you're not yet a partner, please sign up on that one. Question here from Stephen, and I think the answer is no to this one. Do we have any virtual router switches to practice on?
Nah. Unfortunately, we don't. Cloud.
Yeah, I don't know if there's anything
Cloud
virtual on those ones either. Yeah, that's certainly something we haven't, I guess, really had to dream of doing before, because we've had some, really well, really good, well attended classroom sessions when we've gone through all of this hands-on. But certainly the last 3 months, we've as lots of businesses have, and I'm sure pretty much everyone that's here today, you've had to adapt and pivot your business in some way. So that's something that we may need to look at. Okay, David, if you could perhaps just take us back a couple of slides. So here's our offer today, which I mentioned at the top of the webinar. So there's a survey that you'll be sent shortly, which you'll get. There's a survey there that should take around just no more than 2 minutes to complete. That'll be sent via email at the conclusion of the webinar. Once you complete that, you'll be sent a coupon code, and you can go and buy one of those 4 switches at some fairly deep discounts on those products. So do keep a lookout for that. Okay, David, next slide if you could, please. So if you're not yet a D-Link partner, please do sign up for these, dlink.com.au/rewards or .co.nz/rewards. So that's intended for people that are selling into small, medium and large business customers, people that are MSPs. So via our distribution partners, we offer some great upfront discounts. You can make some good margin when you're selling our product. There's some incentives in there for you and your team. With gift cards that you can redeem via the D-Link Partner Portal, as well as quarterly incentives that we run as well. If you reach your target during this calendar quarter, so concluding at the end of this month, there's a Amazon Echo 8 Alexa that is available to our partners that achieve targets. So you need to be a partner to be able to participate in that program. You do get access to priority technical support all across Australia and New Zealand as well. So with 7 distributors across the region available for to purchase product from, so across Australia and New Zealand, both Ingram Micro and Synex, and then in Australia only, Blue Chip Infotech, EdSys, Hills, Multimedia Technology, and Pacific Datacom. So please do go and sign up to that partner program. Some great benefits for being a part of that, and there's lots of great information that we have available to our partners as well. So if you didn't get a chance to have a look at the next slide, which has got all of our team's contact details all around the region. There's myself, I'm Phil, run the commercial or business sales for D-Link across Australia. Got a great team of account managers. To work with. So up in Queensland, based in Brisbane, looking after Queensland and Northern Territory, is Bernie Reisenberger. So Bernie's been with D-Link for after 12 years as a really great asset, really known within that within both of those markets that he looks after. Michael Crocombe, based in Sydney, looking after New South Wales and the ACT. Again, is a real asset to the team. As an SMB IT professionals valued contributor, has been awarded that status over the last 3 years. So that's a great. Again, please work with Michael. If you haven't met him, please make sure that you make contact with him if you're based in New South Wales or ACT. Down in Melbourne is Colin Chamberlain, who's been with D-Link longer than anybody cares to remember. Based in Melbourne, but looking after Vic, Tas, SA and WA. Covers a lot of ground. Is a really fantastic character, and very passionate in looking after his customers and making sure that they get the absolute best service possible. We've then got our 2 fantastic pre-sales engineers, David, based in Sydney, looking after Queensland NT, New South Wales and the ACT, who's conducted the session this morning. So great job, David. Thank you very much for taking us through those products this morning. And Aaron Bilton, who is based down in Melbourne. You can see him on screen there as well. A couple of comments on here. I'm not sure I should necessarily read these out. Aaron here, Lee saying you can call Aaron at 5 a.m. after taking out a client's network and have him save the day. That benefit alone is worth becoming a partner for. So Lee, that's great to hear about that. Aaron, I'm not sure if you like getting up at 5 a.m., but that's certainly the level of commitment that you and I think anybody at D-Link has to being part of to being a D-Link partner. Question here from Glenn: will Colin drop by any of these sessions or avoid them due to no free lunch? Boom, boom. I think you've got Colin pretty well there then, Glenn. Appreciate the comments there. So a couple of comments that have come through here from people wanting to get a copy of the session. Yes, it is being recorded, and that will be emailed out to everybody that's been on here as well. So Raymond, Winsey, and Barry, you will get a copy of the recording. Okay, so if there's no further questions, that concludes today's session. David, thanks for being a great teacher for us today. Don't know that it's particularly easy trying to teach about VLANs and taking through a technical setup and trying to do that online in a Zoom session. But great job. We've got some very positive feedback, some positive comments about the use of the video camera and so on and so on. So really well done. That's great. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.
Please be sure to join us in 2 weeks' time on the 25th of June as Aaron takes us through the third in our series of these sessions covering the ever important spanning tree amongst other things, and some basic network troubleshooting like looping and so on. So that's all from us today. It's a very good morning, good afternoon to wherever you are joining us from today, and we look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks' time. Stay safe and stay well.
Thank you.